Welcome back to the Deployment Masterclass. I'm Lizanne, and I'm here today with a very special guest, Krista. And we are going to be talking about connecting with your community and finding that essential support that you need in community during deployment. So I invited Krista because she was named as the 2018 Military Spouse of the Year. Congratulations. That was the Armed Forces Insurance Military Spouse of the Year. So thank you so much for joining us. It's really an honor to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be with you. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. And so 10 years ago, I became a military spouse. I married Staff Sergeant Michael Harrison Simpson. And we did a couple moves, had a couple of kids, Michael and Gabriel. And we were out at Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington. And unfortunately, during a 2013 deployment, Mike was wounded in an IED attack and died at Landstuhl Army Medical Center in Germany. And I just, the purpose, I think, of me being with you today is not to talk about that, is to talk about how support system was so great during that time that in 2017, I married Master Sergeant Gus Anderson right back into the military community. Why? Because there is no other community like ours, right? And so, and of course, in May of 2018, I was named Military Spouse of the Year through the Armed Forces Insurance program. So
I think you're just such an inspiration. Thank you for sharing that story. We want to honor Mike and we want to honor his memory, but I also want to let you all know that that is not going to be the focus of the video. I invited Krista here because of her inspirational story and because of how she has moved forward and worked through some very difficult situations. So fear not, we will not be focusing on deployment grief. We are focusing on the positive aspects of how to build your community, how to lean on a community for support when you need it most. And obviously, Krista had a time of needing it deeply, but all of us go through minor struggles and small moments of needing a community around us. So we want to focus on building that community and investing in the community, even when it feels uncomfortable and difficult.
right. I think it's important to know too that no matter what the time is, what the time in your life is, and the difficulties, don't ever think that they're small, right? They're yours, and everybody's situation is different. Everybody's struggles are different, but they're very real.
Absolutely. I don't like when people compare deployment and compare, my situation. Because whatever you're going through at that time, that's difficult for you. And so we want to be here to support you and encourage you, no matter how big or how small that challenge is, because it feels big to you. And you're here because you're looking for support.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the deployments that you've been through, either with Mike or with your current husband, Gus. And what are some of the ways that you have built community and invested in a community, either leading up to a deployment or going through the deployment itself?
Okay. So the first deployment was in 2007 to 2008, Iraq. Mike was deployed for 15 months, and it was actually right before we got married. So some say that it doesn't count. I say that it kind of doesn't count because I was doing my own thing too. He said, I want you to live your life. So I wasn't embedded in our military community yet, right? I worked in New York. I worked in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. I mean, we were both in the sand at one point in time. So, I think that, I look at that and I see the ease of that deployment and how I didn't have kids. It wasn't, it was very different. And I don't say that it was easy. It's not that I didn't worry, but I also wasn't, I was blissfully ignorant is what I'll say. And so moving forward to the second deployment was in 2013. Now we had done multiple TDYs, anywhere between 3 weeks and 6 months. And so I mean, when they're gone, right? I mean, yes, it matters if they're in a war zone or if they're in Korea or Thailand or, riding elephants in our spear fishing, scuba diving in the Maldives. But, I think that home is still the same, right? No matter what. And so I slowly started to realize that, being a part of a community that understood the difference between a business trip and a deployment or a TDY. I mean, we've all been there sitting in the, PTA meeting, and somebody says, "Oh, my husband's gone the whole entire weekend. I don't know what I am going to do."
Yep.
And you're like,
Yeah.
And generally what you say is, "Hey, let me know if you need any help."
That's a great response. I like that.
I can bring it a lasagna if it makes it easier for you, as you're as you're at like day 247 of your husband being gone. So it's nice to be, it really, I think, does make a difference to be in a community where you don't have to complain about it. You don't have to gripe about it. You're just among people that understand. And if you're like, geez, I wish I could have woke up and drank a glass of wine this morning instead of coffee, they're like, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm there too.
I think it is really important to have that balance, to be invested in the military community, whether you're a girlfriend or a fiance or whether or not you live near base. There is some value to, like you said, being around others who just get it and understand it. And I think it's important for everyone to connect, even when they say, hey, I'm not going to be anywhere near the unit. I don't need to connect with those people during deployment. I've got my own group of friends. That's great. But there's always value in investing, I think, in the military community.
And then you're also, you're in the loop with everything. I noticed that huge difference. And, obviously moving forward, with, in 2013, when everything happened, our community literally, that's why we founded our organization, to give back, because it was just so overwhelming, right? It was, in a good way, it was, the spouses showed up, the ones who weren't afraid to walk through the door. And I get it, not wanting to walk through the door, but, just showing up and doing things and meals and so on and so forth. So, moving forward, when Gus and I got married in March of 2017, he deployed a month later.
Oh, wow.
Afghanistan, yeah. And actually landed in Afghanistan 4 years to the day that Mike had passed. And so I was like, okay, Lord, what are you trying to teach me? And I thought, I'm a pro, right? I can deal with this. This is, and I think, we're so used to being the strong kind of backbone of everything, because you handle everything in your household generally, that it feels a little weakening when you recognize that you're a little afraid of what tomorrow might bring. But I think that if we just, if we surround ourselves with the rest of the people in the unit and the spouses that get it, I'll tell you, I remember, I'm jumping around here, but in 2013, we met, and we found out, actually, instead of, our company was going originally to the Philippines, and then they switched it to Afghanistan. And some of the spouses were really stressed. Our last deployment, almost broke us, or, and I was hearing these things, and for me, I was like, we're not going to make as much money. I was very flippant about it. I was just so kind of, like, oh, we're going to go from making like $86 a day to $3 a day. Right. And I think that, I didn't recognize at that time. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to turn that off. I didn't recognize the you know, the true blessing and the gift of having our community with us until, you know, until going forward. And so just to be able to connect, because I seemed in 2017, I almost felt like a hermit, right? I just was like, okay, anything that I can do to make sure we get through the day. I felt like I was treading water and I was like sipping air, you know.
I think we can all relate to that
Yeah.
exhaustion, and emotionally and physically. I mean, deployments are really draining and they challenge you.
Even when you're not thinking about it, even when you're not consciously nervous about what's happening on the other side, you know, it's just, I don't know, there's something about it. It's like internally, um, it, I mean, it's just like anything else, right? I mean, you remember when you sent your child to the first day of school? I was petrified. I was petrified. Something was going to happen. He was going to have a terrible day and I wasn't going to be able to change it. And it was going to change his journey forever, you know? So
I think there's that struggle with a loss of control, and that it's beyond us. It's just your hands. And really all you can do is take care of your own life and kind of hope for the best, which on some days is easier to do than others.
Yeah.
In 2013, when you needed to lean the most on the community that was around you, what are some of the things that people did that were the most supportive or the most helpful during that time?
Simple text message. I know it sounds funny, but you know, just letting me know that they were there and they were thinking about me was very, and praying for me was very helpful. It was not something, and then the understanding is, you know, they would kind of start off with, you don't have to reply to this message. I just want you to know, you know, because I mean, you're getting a lot, right? And then I was fed so well. I cannot even, never have I ate so good in my whole life, even to this moment. You know, for a month and a half, I got, because, you know, we're like this big melting pot in the military. Everybody has a different culture background. They cook differently. And it was like Brazilian food, Mexican food. I mean, Italian food. It was good old American food. I mean, it was amazing. And I think that for the women that stood beside me during that time, just like showing up in an atmosphere. So our commander at the time, his wife, Susan Alden, she actually is the executive director of Warriors at Ease right now, which is an amazing, amazing organization. And they do yoga and mindful meditation and such. And so she had this thing, it was called, she actually brought us all together. It was, we called it a circle. And she would light candles and we would literally be in a circle on the living room floor, right? And we had a stick and we would pass it around and then we would talk about, there would be a topic for the evening and we would talk about whatever, you know, on that topic. And if there was something else we wanted to talk about, we totally could. And she invited me.
And that just meant a lot.
You know, I mean, she wasn't afraid, and the women in that room were not afraid to have me there. They were not afraid to, you know, and then after a while, some of them would come with, hey, heard this song and I thought of you and I really want you to hear it. And they weren't afraid to see me cry, you know, because they knew that it was, for me, it was a blessing, right? And so they really got me through the moments. And now think about it. Mike died within a month of their deployment. These women were meeting with me while their husbands were still deployed. And it was one of the scariest deployments we had ever had, you know. So their courage was just immeasurable. It really was.
That's amazing. And that's one thing I do love about the military community. The generosity and the strength and the sincerity is just overwhelming and surprising sometimes. But I think that's so important when you say that, you know, just sending a text message can really make a difference to someone, because I want to remind everyone of that, whether you are the one that's struggling with something or whether you're the friend that's kind of watching that on the outskirts thinking, oh, I don't know if I should say something. Should I get involved? I don't know what to say.
I don't know what to say is perfect. Quote, I don't know what to say.
Right.
I mean, you're still letting that person know that they're in your thoughts.
Exactly. So I think just sending a simple message, text message, Facebook message, email, whatever it is, it just lets people know that, hey, I'm still with you. I'm here for you. Might be on the other side of the country physically. You might not be near your zip code,
Right.
but I am here. I'm sending you those virtual hugs. And I think that just means so much when anyone is going through something, to know that I'm not in this alone. I have a whole team of people around me who are willing to help me out, like you said, physically with food, or just virtually or emotionally, that all of that support is so meaningful. So I want to encourage all of us that if you're the one needing that support, to reach out and look for it. And if you're the one that's able to give that support, then don't be afraid to send that text message or to offer that meal.
Also, if you're the one that's needing that support, think about the fact that there's probably multiple other, spouses out there that are needing the same thing. And the feeling of helping someone else is very fulfilling. I don't want to call it a selfish act, but I joke all the time that our organization is very selfish, because it's very healing to me to help others. And that can create that dialogue with someone that you really need.
Absolutely. And I want to give you some time at the end to talk a little bit about your organization and where you've gone. But first, I also wanted to approach the subject of the discomfort and the awkwardness sometimes of asking for help, because I think we've all been in that situation. Again, either you're the one that needs help and you know that you're struggling, and you know that you're, like you said, just kind of like barely keeping your head above water, but you just are new to base, or you don't know people that well, or you don't feel comfortable bringing it up. Or sometimes, again, you're the one on the outskirts watching and saying, it seems like that wife is really struggling, or she really seems to have her hands full. What could I possibly do? And what do you recommend for people to kind of get past that awkwardness and that discomfort of asking neighbors and asking strangers for help when they really need it?
I think you're right. I mean, the military is like that in general. Our service members, it's hard for them to ask for help. And so I think that kind of bleeds over, and because a lot of times we're a part of communities that, we're the 1%, right? And the 99% of the rest of the world doesn't really necessarily understand where we're coming from. And so, and we always want to put on that face, right? I always notice, I know it's funny because I was this mom, rushing into school, right? You don't realize that you have bedhead because you forgot to brush the back of your hair, and when I see that, I'm like, hey, you want to go grab a coffee? Or, I try and reach out, because I know that I've been there, and I know that it absolutely comes back around. But I think sometimes make a joke of it. Humor for me works every time. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm drowning and I do not know what to do, but it is, I think, even if it's reaching out to me and I can connect you with resources, right? I can either connect you with, so in the Army we have, and I'm not sure how it is across the other branches, and I know you have spouses groups for every branch, but, reaching out to the FRSA to simply say, hey, I'm struggling a little bit, are there any resources, or is there, respite care kind of, and utilizing those. But also, I think one of the good things is to do is attend those meetings. I mean, we're all kind of like, oh, the FRG, right?
Yes.
But everybody else is on the same page as you at that time. So,
and I would say I've made some friends before and during deployment, because we were the ones that were kind of mutually rolling our eyes during a meeting. So I was like, yay, at least we were here to connect,
Yes, exactly. And I use that today, right? When we PCS, like I was sitting in a volunteer I call it a briefing. The school probably doesn't call it that, but, and, you know, I sat next to the mom that was like, "Oh, I am a hot mess. You know," I'm like, "Me too." We're going to be friends. And we have been since. And so,
That's right.
um, you know, I think just kind of wearing our weaknesses on our sleeve sometimes in that type of environment, you're always going to get the spouse that has it all together.
Mm.
You're always going to see that person, you know, that seems like it, you know, it's so easy, but know that there's nothing easy about this life.
Yeah. And I'm not really sure where that mask and that ideal came from, that anyone has to be the perfect military spouse.
Right.
I'm not sure if it's a leftover 1950s concept or something, but I think in real life, I mean, none of us have it all together. None of us are perfect. And I heard a really great quote the other day that I loved that was saying, you know, so what if people find out that you're not perfect? Guess what? No one ever thought you were.
That's so great.
Like, who do we really think we're fooling when we put on that mask of like, I totally got this, I'm fine, everything's okay? Because it's not. And so I call this deployment support group, I've actually called it How to Handle Deployment Like a Boss.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that with a little bit of a sense of humor, because I do want to encourage and inspire people to know that they can do this and they've got it, and we all have that interior strength. But I also want to totally admit that there's not a single one of us that is a boss mode every single day. You know, like no one's going to do it perfectly.
You know, what's funny is that we came up with a term between our board members, if a few other military spouses. And I don't know, one day I just came, you know, we came out with it, and I was like, sometimes you just have to embrace the suck. They were like, yes, that's exactly it.
Yes.
You know, and just knowing that there is like, there's light on the other side, right? Sometimes we feel like that tunnel is so dark and long, and, you know, and everybody's deployments are different, right? Ours were 6 months, generally max. I mean, gone for, you know, back and forth, gone sometimes for 8 to 10 months out of the year. But it wasn't like that, you know, before Mike was in Special Forces, it was that 15-month deployment. But we never really had to, you know, in our unit, we didn't have to deal with those super long deployments. And I'll tell you, I mean, it's got to seem like a lifetime when you have kids at home and the house, and the hot water tank always blows like the moment they get on that plane, right? And you're like, I just want to hide this from them so they don't have to worry, because you're more worried about them being, you know, preoccupied with your troubles and not being able to concentrate on the mission. So I think that's probably, you know, it's hard to shift from, okay, I'm talking to my husband, everything's great, we're doing really well, to, oh my goodness, I'm falling apart over here. So
I think it is important to have someone that you can confide in and talk to during deployment. And most people assume that that will be their spouse. But realistically, I think sometimes it works out better if it's a close friend, you know, a girlfriend or someone who's known you for a long time.
Yep.
Because you don't want to be dumping all of that negativity on your spouse, and vice versa. I hope that every deployed service member has kind of some battle buddies and some support that they can talk to, so they don't have to dump it all on us.
Yeah.
And that way, when those little daily annoyances go wrong, you can kind of laugh about it and share it with a friend, instead of like waiting for your husband's phone call and then being like, let me tell you how bad my day was.
Right.
Because we've all done that, and it never, ever goes very well. So.
Never works out well. Yeah, exactly. Because then sometimes you're feeling like, and then all of a sudden they come out with, well, guess what happened to me today?
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, you're right.
Oh, my life doesn't seem so hard, and I'm a little bitter about that right now. Yeah, I mean, we need battle buddies too.
Absolutely. And that's what this community building is all about, finding those people that are going to help carry you through and help encourage you. So I want to move forward and give you a chance to talk about Unquiet Professional and the organization that you started. Can you tell us a little bit about not just what it is, but sort of how you were able to build support and find a community as you went through that new endeavor?
So it actually was born while standing in Arlington National Cemetery. It sounds silly, but you know, I, my very good friend, who's a civilian, Andrea Rinaldi, she's could not have gotten through any of it without her. She was the one who said, I'm flying out right now. I mean, she had that not having a family at the time. And she just really, she was looking for, and I understand because I've been on the other side of that, she was looking for a way to help and support. And we have to understand that as our community looks for a way to support us, we just have to give them an in, yeah. And so, like invite them, I guess. And so, we were standing in Arlington and I looked around at the 100 people that arrived at the funeral. 5 of them lived in the area. Everybody else flew in, and I didn't really grasp it until I looked at the pictures afterwards, actually. But, I said, how do I thank these people? I mean, the Green Beret Foundation sent a check because we flew out to Germany to be with Mike because he was injured and was transferred over there. And I got a package in the mail from the Green Beret Foundation and the Special Ops Warriors Foundation, and GBF said, we know that you're going to have travels, and we don't want you to struggle, we don't want you to financially struggle with those. And we don't want you to worry about a thing. And so, I mean, between the 2 of them, I mean, I had $4,000 to travel with. And so I didn't have to dig into our savings account or ask my mom or, I mean, we were one income. Mike was an E6. And so, just the real, that blew me away altogether. And then, the USO met us at the curb, walked us through the airport. And, even going forward, I would call, months later and Bill Baker would, come out and take the boys out of the car and carry them through the airport for me. And somebody else would carry the car seats. And I was just kind of traveling along like I had, like I was a big deal. I had like assistants or something. It was amazing. It just made it so stress-free for me. I mean, we're all used to traveling by ourselves, but and when we really have to, it's kind of like, and so, 10 days after Mike died, I walked into the Wear Blue Run to Remember community. Mm-hmm. Lisa Hallett lost her husband in 2009 and created this incredible environment that, encourages healthy healing, not only surviving, but thriving. And that was a place that like I found my home there, and so how do I repay these people? A thank you note is not enough, right? For me. And so Andrea said, let's have a fundraiser. I said, oh, that's a good idea. And she was like, I know right where we can have it. We'll have it in Springfield, Massachusetts, which is essentially where I grew up and where she was living, right outside of Springfield at the time. And Eddie Grimaldi from Samuel said, yeah, we'll sponsor it. No problem. Absolutely. Right. And so, and then she said, why don't we start our own organization? Wow, that's a great idea. It could honor Mike, honor his legacy. The boys are little. It's going to, it'll be great. Okay. I do not encourage that. For the record.
Good to know.
I love the Unquiet Professional, but I do not encourage somebody to just go off and start from the ground up. There are so many organizations out there. I mean, I could have attached to any one of them and raised money in Mike's name for that organization and really made a difference without having to do the taxes and the budget and all the book. I mean, come on, let's be honest. But, I mean, I chose the hard road. So here we are 5 years later. And so that was my inspiration, was our community, and because I wanted to give back. But let me tell you the blessings that have come from that, right? I mean, we're still here 5.5 years later. And one example of the people that we've helped, and that's an extreme blessing to me, is one of Mike's friends that served with him as support for First Group, and his wife now, they met actually at the foot of Mike's OR bed. And, moving forward, they're married. Their daughter's name is Harper Michael. After Mike. I know. And she's a little spitfire. I always apologize. I'm like, she's doing that because of her namesake. I'm so sorry. And they're incredible. But both of them as veterans, both of them with, severe PTSD from so many different things, struggled, and Adam medically retired. The Army gave him May 1st of this year as his retirement date, which was 5 years to the day that Mike passed. Mm. And anyways, before we left Washington, he met Paul Joyce, who's our director of veteran programs, and we call them family dinners at my house. And so somebody had dropped out of the trip for the Bob Marshall, the fishing trip. And I said, what about Adam? Right. So I called, of course, as the spouse, I call Kat and I say, listen, are you okay with him being gone for a week before I invite him? I want to make sure you're all in a good place, And so she said, oh my goodness, he could really use it. I mean, he struggled a lot. And then especially once he separated from the military, he was just trying to find his place.
Right.
And so he went, and it changed his life, and for me to be able to then help these people that cared for Mike so greatly, Kat came back and she was like, I want you to know that we were praying in that room, that he was surrounded by people that loved him, whether they knew him or not. He wasn't alone. And what that did for me, and then what I was able to then in turn do for their family. And you can do that through any organization, right? If you're volunteering. But, we've helped, individually, and then obviously it bleeds through the whole family, almost 500 families since 2013 through many programs that we've helped with the organizations that we still support, and then including our own. And it's just really an incredible and empowering feeling to be able to be in a space with people that, that need it. I know they need it, and just offer it to them.
I think it's amazing that you are able to make a difference in so many lives, to just touch people in a positive, meaningful way. And also there's some satisfaction in being able to use your gifts and use your abilities and to really share them with the world and know that you're doing good. So I think that it can be definitely, there can be a struggle to having to volunteer during deployment. I think people have feelings about that because we don't want it to be just one more thing and a burden and, something that you're kind of doing begrudgingly. But I do find that, like you said, every time that I'm able to focus on giving to others and kind of get outside of my own little fog and my own little, self-centered household and look outside to the big world around me, it's always refreshing and it's always rewarding. Even when it feels like it's going to be an effort, we get so much more back when we help others that you can't describe that and you can't value that. So sometimes when I hear people that are really kind of caught in a funk during deployment and just exhausted and worn down and, how am I going to do this for one more week and one more day? I don't want to say like, get out and volunteer, but I want to say, look around you and see if there's one more person that you can help either in that unit or in your neighborhood. Just try and touch one other person's life, because sometimes focusing on someone else's hardships really puts our own into perspective,
Yes.
makes our
Yeah.
own a lot easier to bear. Is that what you would say is one of the big rewards of starting your organization?
Absolutely. Without a doubt, hands down, is just to be able to make a difference in our community. Know that I'm making a difference in the community that made a difference for me, that literally changed my journey. I mean, you can go one of two ways, right? And and I chose the healthy and empowering path for me because that's what it looked like, and it was because of the community that lifted me up, that encouraged me to marry Gus instead of, oh my goodness, I can't believe you're going to marry your husband's friend. That's kind of, I judged me too, right, in the beginning. I'm not going to lie. But I look at his just how amazing he is and our life together. And you can't get that anywhere else. And if people really care about you, you're going to feel it, and they're going to encourage you to do something that makes you happy. And that's what we try to do.
Absolutely. Well, Krista, I just want to thank you for sharing your beautiful story, your encouragement, and your journey through military life. Obviously, you have been through so much and grown and changed in wonderful ways. And so I just hope that that is an inspiration to all of us. We're all struggling with our own challenges, to look for that light at the end of the tunnel and look for others that we can help along the way, and see if that gives you that, what did you just call it? The wholesome and
Oh, I think that, like filling your cup,
yes.
right, is I think what Brittany talks about. And also, don't be afraid to say no, right? I just had to do that the other day. I was asked to attend something and help out, and I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm just, I'm overdoing it, and I need to say no to something, and I'm sorry that it's to you. And and they totally understood. I've been there, I mean, especially if you're saying it to another military spouse, they're like, oh, I got you. Because we're so used to feeling like, we have to keep going, especially if you're working full time. And then we all volunteer in some capacity, and so when you're in that space, give yourself a little room to breathe, you know, um, and just try to enjoy the good that's around you.
I love that. Well, thank you for that empowering and beautiful message. And I hope that all of us can look for the good around us and celebrate the good around us, even during deployment. So thanks again, Krista, for joining us for the Deployment Masterclass. And I hope that all of you are growing and being empowered and strengthened as you go through your deployment. Thanks so much.
Thank you.